All right, well, welcome to the show, everybody. This is Fifth Street Sports and our special podcast edition coming to you live this wonderful Saturday. I'm Nick Geber, Nolan, Dalla, Frank Perez, and very pleased to welcome to the show today Mr. Mike Shackelford from Wizard of Odds. Mike, thanks so much for joining us in our studios today.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's great to have a special guest. I might say you are the first guest we've actually had in the studio.
Well, I'm honored to be here.
And you lived to get here.
Yeah, I actually live pretty close to here.
Not too far, I hope. So that's
Yeah.
Good. Okay, good. Well, we got a great show to get to today. We've got lots of stuff we're going to talk about because, folks, this is a podcast edition, and we are not on the radio network today on this show. We're going to have a slightly more relaxed format, which I think everybody will appreciate.
We're always relaxed.
Well, some people are more relaxed. No,
Some of us are more relaxed than others.
What do you have?
Well, listen, I'm waiting for our first, let's say, adult beverage endorsement. So I'm going to endorse my own stuff. I think we had Jameson week 1. Gewürztraminer week 2.
You went with a white wine last week.
I'm forgetting now but today was my favorite red wine of all, which is Chateauneuf de Pape from the Rhone Valley. I'm a big French wine connoisseur, and if one of you gentlemen want to imbibe with me, I bought an extra glass. And if not, I'll drink the whole bottle.
Can I ask you a wine question?
Sure.
I know it's totally ungambling related.
Oh yes, it is gambling related.
All right, I just came from Europe, and in Barcelona and Paris, a glass of wine in a restaurant costs €1 or €1.50. Why does it cost $7 to $10 here?
You have just hit an absolute beef of mine as to why the markup in American restaurants, even in resort cities like Las Vegas, the bottle of wine is 4x. In other words, 4 times the retail price, which is why you don't see people drinking wine as much here. I think a lot of it is the cost. I mean, people can make the restaurants, which are largely corporate, can make more money off mixed beverages, draft beers, etc. In Europe, I think it's more of just part of the culture, and so the markup there is 1.5 to 2x. So that's why almost every time you go out in Europe, you'll see bottles of wine everywhere.
Yeah, Europe is just wine heaven.
Well, you were talking about 1x and 2x markups on wine. Nolan, we were talking, before we started the show, we were looking at some video poker speed records, which Mike has on his site. And I was wondering, Nolan, did you set the wine drinking speed record? How many bottles a minute can you do?
Just a second. I got a real quick thing. I'm nothing compared to something I just saw. On ESPN this week, they have a documentary on the life of Andre the Giant. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Great wrestler. He's
Great wrestler.
7'4", 500 pounds, just a giant of a man. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, he was a wrestler in the 60s, 70s, 80s. He died of a heart attack, tragically. A very kind, they call him a gentle giant. This man talk about the drinking record. I'm not making this up. In one setting, he drank 104 beers. He drank a case of wine in one setting. That's 12 bottles. 12 of these in one setting. And by the way, and then just walked out the door straight as an arrow. So talk about somebody can pack.
So in other words, Nolan, a lightweight.
I am a lightweight, every way, shape, or form. But after I heard that, I was like, wow! Now I can just do whatever I want.
Trivia: what was his big movie, and what was the name of his character?
Oh, Andre.
I know this. Yes. Actually, I don't remember the character though. And should I give it away or?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The Princess
Bride.
Yep.
I don't remember the character though.
His character was named Fezzik.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Really?
And that's where our own Steve Fezzik gets his name from.
I didn't know that.
I hope I'm allowed to say that.
No
Yeah.
kidding.
Yeah.
No idea.
Wow.
That's funny. Steve's coming on the show here in a week or two, right?
Yeah, we're actually going to be doing a video podcast series, by the way. If you tune into the show on a weekly basis, we're going to be adding a lot of content. I do a show every Friday called Fifth Street Soccer. We're going to be adding some very interesting one-on-one sit-downs with interesting characters and people in the various businesses.
Including Mike, by the way.
Including
We'll
Mike.
get later on, for
We
sure.
will be sitting down and talking to Mike one-on-one. But check out our website, and maybe Boggs can put that up there for everybody so where they can see us. It's at fifthstreetsports.com, or you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Fifth Street Sports Talk. You can see it there. Look at that.
By the way, props to you, Nick,
Absolute
by the way.
professional.
Props to you, because you're not going to talk, you're going to brag about yourself too much, but your radio show that you put out on Friday, it's Fridays, is when the show airs, and you can watch it later on. You're just on fire in soccer.
Well, I am a bit. I have to admit, I do the show with Nick Webster, who is an old colleague of mine. Nick is the former voice of the Premier League on Fox. We both colleagues. He actually produced my TV show on Fox. That's how I know Nick going back 20 years. But he does the show with me, and look, between Nick and I, you've got 40 years of analysis of the Premier League. So we've been around the block a bit. We've seen an awful lot in that league. We both grew up with it as kids. So when it comes to the big global football, we are on top of it. But yeah, picks have been particularly good. It's been a very interesting season, particularly in England, where the promoted teams this year did surprisingly well, and some teams that have been struggling or teetering around sort of mid-table mediocrity for a number of seasons have finally just sort of given up the ghost. So there's been a lot of movement, and then of course at the top there's a lot of people fighting for those top positions. Tell you what, why don't we bring in another resident of Fifth Street who's not actually here right now in person, but we'll bring him in both in spirit and in voice and through the wonders of computerized video. Well, let's go chat to Oklahoma Brian. Let's bring him in. Brian, are you there?
There he is.
I'm here.
Yeah.
Good to see you guys.
A handsome man.
Look at that. Lovely outfit you're wearing there, Brian. Is that your jammies?
I was at a kid's soccer game. It was about 35 degrees and windy, so I found the warmest thing I could find.
Wow.
Insulated clothes.
Well, now you are back in Oklahoma. Now you were in San Antonio earlier for the Final Four, of course. How is the weather? How's the weather in Oklahoma comparing? Because I have to tell you, the surroundings look awfully familiar.
Well, we travel with the same set, so it's going to look the same no matter where I am.
That's awesome. All right, guys. So look, we've got a lot of topics we want to get to today. We're very pleased to have Mike with us, of course. So we're going to be talking a lot of casino gambling. We're going to be talking about video poker, which is a great weakness of mine. And my little story of video poker is I was going through a very nasty divorce. I was playing a lot of 10-play dollar double bonus at the Rio because I was doing the World Series of Poker.
So that divorce cost you twice as much.
Well, no. And, of course, I lost a lot of money. I mean, over the course of that year, probably the number of hundreds of thousands, but I hope this doesn't make it. There, I've said it. But I also was hitting a lot of jackpots, obviously, right? Because you play 10-play dollars, you're getting, any sort of bonus hand. You can get, low pair with the kicker. All you need is two of them, and they're writing you a W2G, right? Mm-hmm. Anyway, I got a terrible call from my attorney. He was very concerned. My ex-wife has asked for an emergency meeting with the judge because I've been hiding about $600,000 worth of income. She had been intercepting all of these W2Gs that the Harrows had been sending to my house where I was no longer living, and didn't understand that, of course, that was only the win side of the equation. That had nothing to do with the loss side of the equation.
You win all the time.
So exactly. So that was a very uncomfortable discussion I had to have with the judge about why that was not really revenue. And then when he looked me straight in the eye and said, "But why are you doing that?" I don't really know what I could say to that, except, it's better than living with her.
Oh, wow. We need a drum set.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. Okay. Anyway, we're gonna, lots of stuff to get to today, but I want to start off the discussion by talking a little bit about a story that's come up. Look, we had a nice laugh about Steve Wynn, our favorite rub and tug man, a couple of weeks ago, and he's now divested from Wynn. He's gone. He sold all of his shares, which is a shame because he may personally be, one shade shy of a scumbag. But in terms of a visionary and a casino visionary and a mogul, and look, you can walk any property in the Strip. And how long has Wynn been open, guys? What, 10 years, 12 years?
Oh,
at this point?
I think more than that.
more than that.
Yeah,
no.
I think about 20.
I don't think it's been open quite that long, but
I know
close,
he opened
right?
Mirage in 90, right?
Yeah, you know what? I'll flip open
90
the
or
Star
80.
You're
Wars
talking
laptop
about the
here.
Mirage roughly
Yeah.
90.
89
Bellagio
or
was
90.
90.
And then Bellagio was what,
98.
3 or 4?
And then the win, I think, is 10 years later because he had a non-compete. Remember that?
Yeah.
When he left MGM Mirage, he had a non-compete. He couldn't open at his own place, I think, for 8 or 10 years. So, unless I'm wrong, it was 2007, 8, or 9 is when the first win opened.
Gosh, I got to think it's longer than that.
No, I don't think so, actually. And I think I just might have looked this up not too long ago. But whatever. The point I'm making is that You can go to just about any one of these strip casinos that were at the time they opened terrific. The Bellagio, okay. I'm sorry, it's run down. It's long in the tooth.
You mean since
What
he
is?
left? Since he stopped running?
No, just in general. You can walk in the Bellagio now. I mean, it's starting to show its age a little bit. You know, these big
Really?
properties that were once the most beautiful, glamorous, glorious thing. I mean, look, at one point, the Luxor was an incredible experience to go to, right? I remember when they opened the Excalibur. I was here for the opening. I mean, now, you know, you're lucky to escape with your life, I mean, let alone winning anything. But the point I'm making is you can go to Wynn, any of the Wynn properties, and they are always pristine. The attention to detail is superb. The properties themselves are magnificent, magnificent temples to debauchery. The latest news is that MGM is in discussions, sniffing around like a dog in a park. You know, it's that phase, right? I mean, you know, where they are doing the dance, and it looks like MGM are moving in to buy Wynn. And I think, from my perspective, if that does come to pass, that will be an absolute tragedy.
Yeah, and I'd like to get, obviously, we all have opinions on this. I think one of the biggest things that we, as consumers or customers or gamblers, we have to worry about is when you have a monopoly or less competition, particularly in gambling or on the strip. If they're the only game in town, they set the rules, they set the odds, they set the prices. They can pretty much do what they want. The great thing about Las Vegas, gentlemen, you've both been here longer than I think both of us, is that when Las Vegas started out, it was, you know, when you went to every different casino, they were all owned by different people, and it was very competitive. They really had to work hard to get your dollar, right?
I agree 100%.
Yeah. Well, look at the MGM set this pay for parking thing. They're the ones that first started it. I've been here since 1964. I could never conceive of having to pay $20 to park in Vegas. MGM started that, and now you're just down to Treasure Island and Venetian. And a lot of the Harris properties, of course. But before you know it, I think within 2 years, everybody's going to charge for parking.
Yeah. Well, Mike, let me ask you this. We obviously know the downside of that. We see what happens at the MGM properties and very corporate-oriented. Is there any upside to a takeover like this?
No, competition is a good thing, and I lamented when MGM bought Mandalay and Harris bought Park Place. And now most of the strip is controlled by just two companies. It's a bad thing, and it's going to get even worse if MGM gobbles up Wynn. I really hope it doesn't happen, and I think Wynn is a good place to play. I really always have a good time there. Always leave happy.
2005, by the way.
2005.
2005.
He was right. 13.
So thank you,
13
Wikipedia.
years.
But it opened on. Says right here. Anyway, 2005. Look at the date exactly.
I'm sorry. Can I ask something of both of you gentlemen? I'm curious about one thing about the Wynn and say the MGM takes them over. Does that mean the sportsbook odds, they won't be independent any longer, and they'll just copy the board of
Probably.
everyone else?
Probably.
Which
for
is
sure.
really bad for sports gamblers because you want to have as many outs and as many potentially a variety of numbers. Yes.
You're absolutely right.
Plus, you're going to lose a great guy in Johnny Avello, who runs that Wynn. He's a special character in the sports industry.
They have a great sports book there.
Yeah, really. They really do. You know what I was going to take? Nick, now that we have Brian on for a limited time with Mike,
Yeah,
I really wanted to get to that
Yeah.
NCAA thing with
Yeah, why don't we do that? Let's go back to Brian Allen, Oklahoma. Brian, you want to talk? We'll talk about the NCAA.
Yeah, Mike had an interesting thing in the brackets you had, right?
Yeah, so one thing that always drives me crazy is around March Madness, the media quote what, in their opinion, is the probability of the perfect bracket. And it's always a number that is way, way off. One number that you hear bandied around a lot is basically 1 in 2 to the 63rd power, which is what it would be if you just picked randomly every game, which comes to 9.22 times 10 to the 18th power. The odds are nowhere near that long. And would you like me to explain like a very basic strategy to doing a bracket and your probability of... It's very simple. You just pick the higher ranked seed every single game. And what I did was I looked at how often, what happened every time a 1 seed played a 16, a 2 of 15, a 3 of 14, every single matchup that could happen if you had this strategy. And going back all the way to 1985. And to make a long story short, if you always pick the higher ranking seed, and then when it got down to 4, number 1, seeds you just picked randomly, the chances of a perfect bracket are 1 in 42,743,890,552.
Oh, that's it, huh?
Yeah, so it's. I mean, I know it's still a huge long shot, but it's nowhere near the ridiculous odds that they always quote in the media. And another thing that they're always quoting in the media is this offer by Warren Buffett that he said he would give any employee $1 million for life if they could fill out a perfect bracket. And even using my strategy, if we assume that the employee lives 60 more years, the expected value, and I also assume that he has, or I didn't assume, you can get off Wikipedia, that he has 377,000 employees. So the expected cost of him for this offer was only $529. So it really was
Cheap
no
bastard.
big deal.
Yeah,
He gets
Good
all this
Lord.
publicity for only $529.
Yeah.
Now, here's another question though for you. I mean, if it's free to enter, why not just get a bot and enter 42 billion times?
If you could do that, you should.
Yeah, well, I would think you would, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's guys. Hey,
Always looking for the egg.
I can't believe we put this out on the internet. Everybody's going to be doing it now. Oh, good Lord.
That's still unbelievable. 43 billion almost, and that's with his strategy.
Yeah. It could be improved upon a little bit with some intelligent handicapping, but I don't know. It's just something that gets asked of me all the time. So I finally looked at, like I said, every single game going back to the beginning of the tournament and calculated the odds.
You know, you bring up a great point, though. But one of the things that I've learned about gambling here in Las Vegas over the 5 minutes or so I've been doing it. Mom, you're watching this, right? 5 minutes, really. Just started yesterday. I'll give it up, really. Knowing the odds are very, very important. Whether you're playing video poker, which is terrifically important if you're playing, or whether you're playing poker, I mean, that's a big part of your decisions. It's betting habits of your opponents. It's your chances, your outs, the odds of hitting various cards in various positions. But just knowing that fact and educating yourself even to the smallest level can give you an enormous edge against other players that don't get that. And I'm always amazed when I walk into a casino and see the light boards they have next to the roulette table, or the fine Asian people with their pads who love baccarat, taking down every hand, writing down, looking for histories, there are none. I mean, it's a totally random game each time out.
You're absolutely right.
And if it's not a totally random game each time out, get a great lawyer because you just won big. Okay. So,
But you know what I find interesting about that, because I've ran casinos. Obviously, I've been at the Venetian, and they have single green roulette, and then the basic double green roulette. Which so instead of going like 5.23 because there's two numbers against you, there's only one. The people will still play the one with the two greens.
Well, they have
scary.
000 roulette there
triple
now.
zero now.
Yeah.
Yep. Saw
And
that.
people play it more than the 000 at the same minimum.
That's
Oh,
ridiculous.
I can't
The
believe
more the
that.
zeros, the more people play.
You're using another 3% or something with another. With
Yeah,
the
it
triple zero?
pumps it from 5.26 to 7.89% house advantage.
Yeah.
And there's never a shortage of players playing it.
Unbelievable.
It's amazing.
That is the game to be in.
So-
Seriously.
I got a
But it's
question for
human
you guys.
Yes, go ahead.
So, hey, Mike, I'm a big fan of your website. I've been looking at it for probably almost 20 years, I think. And I've heard you guys
20 years.
talking.
You did better get away, Brian, if he's looking for it for 20 straight years. Sorry, I had to do that.
But I hear you guys talking a lot about playing perfectly, right? Playing perfect blackjack, perfect poker, which I think is a great thing to aspire to. But I'll just say this. I'm curious what you think about this, Mike. I get a chance to look at a lot of sports betting accounts. People are constantly asking me to evaluate an account and tell me, or have me tell them who this is and what kind of player I think it is. And, if I see an account that plays too perfectly, that is only playing Wong teasers, or her, I suppose, parlays are always somewhat correlated. There's always closing line value on their bets. I start to think maybe this isn't the right player for me. And I think that although playing perfectly is a great thing to aspire to. One of the things that we have to deal with now in this era of big data and super analysis is the ability to play close to perfect but still look like a human. And I don't know a lot about. I only know sports betting, but is that something that comes into play sometimes with blackjack or video poker, trying to make yourself look like a human while still having a significant edge?
Well, yeah, first of all, thanks for the kind words. And regarding video poker, there's such a thin advantage there that most video poker professional players don't smooth it over at all. They play fast, and they always play on the multiple point days, and they are as aggressive as possible, and they just hope to make a living out of it as long as they can. Because if you start giving them a cover play on slots, or you don't play on the multiple point days, it really cuts into your winnings a lot. It's expensive to not play when you have the best of it.
But Brian, I know what you're talking about. That I've seen some really, really good blackjack counting teams. Guys that really win. And believe me, I've been on both sides of the blackjack table. I've seen guys who, let's say at the Cosmopolitan, they were spreading 25 to 10,000 in blackjack, with all true odds, 3-2 on blackjack and everything. And these guys were the best that have played blackjack. I seen where so now the pit boss is watching them. The pit boss is actually watching them, and now there's a really good count. Normally, you would say to yourself, you wanted to put a big bet out there. They would put a small bet, but that wasn't the big disguise. The big disguise was a lot of times when they had like $100 bet and not a $5,000 bet, they would stand on 16 against a face card, take insurance, make really, really tourist kind of like real bad plays. Then the pit boss would see 4 or 5 moves like that. Like, we all know you don't stand on 16 against a 9, or you take insurance with like a bad count, with like a bad thing. So right away, the pit boss would just shake his head and move on to another table. Then they could play. Because at that point, when you have a $100 bet and you stand on a 16 against a 9, you're not really giving away that much. But then they would make their real, right. and it kind of throws their, surveillance off a little bit.
Yeah, I know, like on the sports betting side, I will, it doesn't cost anything really. If I have a open parlay and I see the first leg is clearly a loser, I'll put something that just looks atrocious into the open spots. Or if it's a spot that has open teasers, and I want to look like I'm kind of a recreational player, and I see the first leg, or second leg is about to go down in a teaser, I'll go in and put just, I'll tease a basketball game or something that makes no sense, just to potentially make myself look a little bit less robotic.
Yeah, right, exactly. Now, Mike, are you pretty good at the odds on the NFL teasers and stuff?
I used to love NFL teasers back when the odds were still good. Like you could lay 110 on a 2-teamer and get plus 180 on a 3-teamer and plus 300 on a 4-teamer. But I can't find that anywhere. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're right.
Hey guys, you know what we're going to do? We're going to take a very quick break, and then we're going to come back. On the other side of the break, we'll pick up the conversation where we left off. You're watching Fifth Street Sports. It's great to be with you. Nick Geber, Nolan Dalla, Frank Perez, special guest Mike Shackelford, and of course, Oklahoma Brian in the window. When we come back, though, we're going to, Brian, we're actually going to have to talk to, or not have to, like we're being forced to, but we're going to talk a little esports, and we're going to welcome to the show a brand new contributor, someone we haven't spoken to on the air before, Cody Longo from Esports Insider. So we're going to take a little break, we'll be back with you on the other side. Somebody release my cat from the storage room.
I was wondering where that cat was.
This is I knew we had to figure out where she was. We've never been on the radio, but I think eventually we're going to get on 5 minutes on the syndicate. You're welcome to come on anytime.
Yeah.
Well, we are. The network we're on is, as I said, is a pretty big one. We're on about 500 stations. There she is. She followed me in earlier while I was. Are you having trouble hearing on this, or is it just falling out?
No, I'm having trouble hearing.
Okay, Boggs, is she there? Just leave it cracked. She can come out. Just turn the thing around. Okay, if you want to put that back in your ear, we'll go ahead.
This is the most beautiful cat in the world.
Isn't she gorgeous?
This is my Bengal.
Yeah.
Michael, so you don't know this new thing we're going to be doing, but I'm going to do an interview.
Hey folks, welcome back to Fifth Street Sports here, live from the basement in Fifth Street. It is great to be with you. Nick Geber, Nolan, Dalla, Frank Perez, and special guest Mike Shackelford joins us. Mike from Wizard of Odds. You can visit his site at wizardofodds.com. A really, really important site. If you like gambling in any way, shape, or form, you need to do yourself a favor and educate yourself so that you're not just giving your money away. And it's a great site to start with, and Mike is a math genius, and I feel, quite frankly, really just like a slug sitting next to him. But I don't know what else to say. But look, one of the things we're going to be talking about a lot.
Nobody argued with you by that last remark.
I noticed that, Nolan. Thank you. Exactly. We're going to be talking about all sorts of different gambling, sports betting, the lifestyle, really. I mean, if you like that adrenaline, then you're going to like anything we cover here on this show because it's sports betting, it's gambling. We got it all. There is a massive industry out there, guys, that is in the betting and the sports category that I think our combined ages here put us over the fence, over the threshold for being able to understand it. But there are lots of people who do, and we're talking about esports. I grew up with Pong.
Me too.
Donkey Kong, Gallagher. Let's not forget Zaxxon. Okay.
How about Pac-Man?
Pac-Man. Yeah, it was kind of mainstream.
1970s games,
Right, that was us.
Right.
You put
And of course now it's Dota, it's CS:GO,
Call of
there's
Duty.
all of these games. And there are sports, and there are leagues, and there is betting around it. It is the next massive explosion in betting, sports betting. It is esports, and along those lines, rather than just sit here and wax poetic about the old days for us, we thought that part of our goal here at Fifth Street Sports is to bring you the skinny in an entertaining fashion. Skinny is not a word I should use when referring to myself, but be that as it may. So we're very pleased to bring our first esports guest to the show. Cody Longo from Esports Insider joins us on our magical window. How are you doing, Cody?
I'm good. How are you?
All right, it's good. Thanks so much for joining us. You definitely look like an e-gamer.
He looks the part.
Yeah. You don't have that glazed over look though. Yeah. But
casting call was good, Nick.
Yeah, it was good, wasn't it?
Boy, he's got the nice teeth and everything. He really looks like a winner at this game.
Yeah. Hey, Cody, can we see those thumbs? Let's see those thumbs. Let's see them. That's Gamer's thumb, right? You see, look, he's got it right. hey, Cody,
I grew up with Gallagher too.
Yeah, you grew up with Gallagher as well. Nice, yeah.
Pac-Man.
And Pac-Man. I used to have a complete collection of vintage arcade games, the one I grew up with, but sold them off, and then the market boomed after I did that. Could have killed myself, and then it's crashed now, but that's okay. Let's as an aside, Cody, you and I spoke a little bit before this interview, and I was trying to sort of get a handle on the best way to describe esports to people that didn't know it. And I think the best analogy I would use would be if the Olympic Games is a sporting event, and there are tennis and soccer and track and field, and there's skiing and luge and all these sorts of other things in the winter. Esports is the same in that it would be like I would say the Paralympics, but I don't mean that in any form of disrespect. I mean, it's the same thing. It's just a parallel set of sports, but they're played in the virtual world, whether it's Street Fighter or League of Legends or any one of these. Would you say that analogy is fair?
Yeah, sure. I mean, esports, I define it as a sport facilitated by an electronic system, a video game, i.e. And I think you're right. People will pigeonhole esports as just one thing, one game, when in reality it's multiple games which have different rules. The games are so different themselves, and also the communities. So when we talk about sports, yes, you have hockey, soccer, tennis, basketball, and then for esports you will have Counter-Strike, League of Legends, Dota, Halo. So I think that's an accurate way to put it. Yeah.
So Cody, what's the size of the market for esports right now in terms of dollars?
Are you just referring to gambling specifically?
Yeah.
Well, in the beginning of this year, Business Insider valued the esports betting market at $900 million, and that number is likely to have mushroomed since then. So it's a pretty sizable market at the moment.
That is a big market, and the people that are betting on esports. I mean, is this millennials? Is this old guys like us that like to bet on things and figure we have an edge? I mean, who are the people right now that are out there actually putting down their hard-earned dosh on these matches?
Well, the demographic for esports is typically males between 18 to 30, and I'd say that in that window is primarily where most of the betting is coming from.
That is very interesting.
Because Nick, I'm curious about one thing. One tie into Las Vegas. They've opened up. Cody, I want to ask you something about. They've opened up vast arenas now.
Yeah, the
like
Luxor,
stadiums,
downtown Grand. I mean, they got some big.
Right. I think the Luxor. They have these tournaments, and they're filling these vast auditoriums with thousands of people who are watching this as a not just gambling exercise, but they're fans, and it's almost a sport. Can you discuss that?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a spectator sport. It's something that is incredibly exhilarating to watch. I mean, just like some of you may like to watch baseball or soccer played at the professional level. I mean, right? That's fun for everybody. I played soccer my whole life, and I watched it on TV. So playing these games like Halo and Call of Duty, the things that I used to play, watching them being played at the premier level and seeing people do things that you can only dream of doing is just incredible, and it's exciting, and it's packaged in a way that is very exciting with, you have really knowledgeable commentators that are intellectual and have fantastic insights. And the way it is produced and presented to the fans is fantastic. And I haven't had the opportunity to go to the Luxor Arena, but I've seen pictures and it looks fantastic. I mean, it's a brand new sport, and the way that they're building up and presenting it in that fashion is really hitting it on the head, I'd say.
So, Cody, what would you say some of the major tournaments are that we're looking at for esports over the year? And again, it's like saying, well, you got the World Cup and you got the World Series and you've got the NHL playoffs because each one's a different sport. But there are certainly some sort of quote unquote majors that stand out. What would you say those are?
Right. Well, for example, this from the 18th to the 22nd of this month is the DreamHack Marseille Masters for Counter-Strike, and that's a huge tournament. And sometimes it depends on the actual game, but the tournaments sort of rank from major to minor, and that there's different different
tiers.
Basically, yeah, like divisions is the word I'm looking for. So there's so many tournaments that happen. One of the biggest ones for Dota is the international. I think last year the prize pool was 27 million, around that number. So that's a huge tournament. This one in France right now for Counter-Strike coming up is going to be huge, and we have a lot of odds markers putting out odds for that, and people are going to place bets on outright winners.
You know, one thing I wanted to ask Cody, in this competition with esports, is there any kind of, you know how when you're playing chess, there's really not too much luck involved? Is there any kind of like short-term luck involved in the game? Like he draws a certain screen or he draws a certain position where he can get lucky? Like, you know, even though an inferior poker player could catch two runners or something, is there any luck involved at all?
It depends on the game. So I'm not an expert in all of them, but I'd say that typically most of the games are level and fair. And I mean, if you have a game that involves too much luck, then it's most likely not going to be an esport.
Oh, okay.
Right. It's very much player skill, right? I mean, that's really
Yeah. Can I ask a question
Yeah,
about why one player would be Cody? Why one player would be favored in a market or a specific game versus another? And I know this is going to sound like, again, one of these old people's questions, but you see a lot of, if I were to see 3 or 4 people like yourself, you've obviously spent many years crafting your expertise in specific games. Why would somebody go off at 7-1, another fella 12-1, another at 20-1? Explain what would give someone an edge.
It's based off, previous tournament results. These players are practicing online all the time, and one of the advantages of esports is that you can stream their practices on Twitch, so people can see how they're playing, how they're stacking up against other teams, and obviously, they participate in leagues leading up to tournaments. So, example for Halo right now, there's the Halo World Championship, and leading up, they're doing online competitions constantly and playing each other. The top players are playing each other leading up to them. So you can see how teams stack up and will do. And obviously there's things like roster changes that was really predominant in Counter-Strike right now.
So I think that's a really important piece of this equation, is that it's very rare that you're going to just bet on Joe Blogs to win against Frankie Smith. You're betting on teams usually that have a roster of players. So just like you would bet on Liverpool or Manchester United, you're going to bet on Team Echo Fox, which is actually a team that's owned by former NBA player Rick Fox, whose son is on the team, and a bunch of other teams. So and those teams themselves might field a CS:GO team. So Team Echo Fox might have a CS:GO team. They might field a Street Fighter team or whomever. So there's a lot more kind of the stable that you come out. It's a cross between sort of team sports and the old Roman gladiatorial games in many respects. I mean, which gladiator school you came out of, might affect how well you perform in the arena. Yes, I know. I have some of those tickets, by the way. It's amazing. I always bet on the Macedonian. I don't know why. But also coming into the sport, Cody, are lots of big time A-list, top-tier sponsors, and that seems to be really driving a lot of the growth of it right now from a business perspective.
Absolutely. Sponsors are huge for esports. I mean, not all we got, but it is a massive portion about it. It probably amounts for, I read something recently that said it amounted to probably 50% of the revenue or something insane like that. Wow. And there's big name sponsors. The list goes on and on, but it's, Buffalo Wild Wings, Snickers, Geico sponsored a Super Smash Bros. Highlight series. You have Red Bull, who's been in esports since 2007. So you have so many prominent names that are jumping in on this because there's a lot of opportunity and exposure for the top players and teams and games.
That's fascinating stuff, Cody. So let's turn our attention to actually betting on esports. And we just scratched the surface today in this discussion. We're going to get into this a lot more. Hopefully with Cody will be joining us more to talk about it. But there are places you can go to put bets on esports. There are lines available. I believe Bet Any Sports has some esports lines available, and maybe Boggs can put up for our viewers. There's a special. We have a special right now. If you go to Bet Any Sports,
it's amazing.
BetAnySports.com, and you sign up right now and you use the code Fifth Street. Well, you can kind of see it there. You use the code Fifth Street. You can get a bonus on your deposit of up to $500 bonus. So you could deposit up to $1,000. They will give you $1,500 to play with, which is there you go, which is a pretty astounding thing when you think someone's going to give you a lot of free money to play with.
You can deposit $2,000 and get $3,000. The bonus is good for $1,000. Not on. It's $1,000 bonus.
Oh, so you're just correcting me?
No, well, I'm just looking at the thing, and I know the guy who runs it.
He's reading the thing.
And I know the guy who runs it too. So
and reduced juice, which we talked about. Talk about a huge thing for a gambler.
So look at this for a gambler. For $2,000, he'll make it look like $3,000. Plus, you're laying $1.02 in soccer, $1.02 in overnight baseball, $1.05 in reduced juice, versus no bonus and laying $1.10 in most places. That's gigantic.
Yep.
So,
but go ahead.
Yeah, no, that is gigantic. Absolutely. So Cody, when we had spoken before the show a little bit to try and get some background on this, how many of the folks that are betting on esports right now? How savvy gamblers are they? Sports bettors. How savvy of a sports bettors are they? Or are these just kids that have been playing the game and seeing the teams and feel they know how people are going to do, deciding to wager some money? Because, we're talking about reduced juice and overnights and all this sort of stuff. How technical is the betting right now on esports?
Right, that's an excellent question. I'd say that it varies. I've gone onto Reddits. Obviously, you know Reddit. And there's specific betting Reddits, that'll say, okay, place your predictions for this CSGO match, this League of Legends match. And, people will get really in-depth talking about, how are the teams matching? What are the previous results? It can be extremely detailed and in-depth.
That's what I wanted to ask him. Cody, what I was going to ask you is, okay, since you said there's not too much randomness, like the best player is going to be the best player almost every time. For betting wise, do they handicap it? Like, do they give you, like, let's say I played against you where you would crush me straight up in a certain game. But if you looked at 20 of our games, you might give me like 18.5 or 20.5. Is that how they level it out for betting? To make it.
I think I misunderstood your question at first because I thought you were asking me if there's like a mechanic of randomness in the game itself, which there's not. So there is opportunities for people for upsets. That's totally not.
There is. But what can cause an upset? Just like the human player, like he's tired, or
it's team sports.
It's team sports.
Yeah,
okay. Okay.
But
if one team,
you're asking for.
Right, but if one team is clearly better than the other team, let's say all the players, then there's no randomness. Do they offset it by putting like a certain margin, like you got to win by this many or that many to make the betting fair, like a point spread?
Yeah, they have. There's multiple ways you can bet on games like League of Legends, for example. They'll have the team to destroy the first tower or first kill, first blood. And then they'll write who wins match one, who wins the group stage, and then who wins the game outright. There's hundreds of different ways to bet on it, which is really makes it very interesting.
That's interesting.
That is pretty fun. That is pretty fun. So there's in-game betting as well, I take it. So is that correct?
You bet online. You don't bet in the games themselves.
No. I don't mean in game. I mean while the game's going on, you can actually bet during the game as well, right?
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
Can I ask something about the future of esports? And Mike, I'd like to bring you into this discussion because you've been around and you've seen, comparatively speaking, you've seen, for lack of a better word, a phenomenon. You've seen, I'll give you some examples. Cody, this is going to go to you next after Michael, so be on the lookout for this. We saw this amazing explosion in poker around 2004, 5, 6, the moneymaker effect, and this kind of everybody that was 17, 18, 19, 20 was playing poker 10, 12 years ago. Well, you don't have that anymore. And about 5 years ago, what did we have? Daily fantasy sports.
Yeah. We
We had a lot of really, really smart people like Cody out there just killing it. Then they kind of squeezed, it obviously DFS is in a state of flux right now, but we saw again a flash in the pan and kind of a fade. My question to you, Mike, you've been around for a while, you've comparatively seen what's gone on with these kind of things. Is esports here to stay, and how do you see it in the future?
Yeah, I think Cody could answer that better than me, but I definitely think that the market is ready for something new, and I personally think that this probably is going to be the next big thing. I don't know much about it. I am curious to know which part of the world produces the best players.
That's an excellent question. It actually depends on the game. So there are, for example, in StarCraft, they have long-standing the best players, no question about it. But they also have an advanced infrastructure where if a
Who's
kid,
that?
South Korea?
Oh, is that Korea?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
South and North. So
I'm sorry, North Korea too? They play? No, really. North Korea plays this? I didn't know that. Is that true?
yeah, absolutely.
Really?
Yeah, wow, I didn't
So,
even
like-
think they
Wow.
had internet there.
So, like, what would be like another country on another game that dominates? Like
Halo, North American and Halo players.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
See, there you go.
hmm
Oh, okay.
So it really depends. I mean, on the game, it's interesting. But like, for example, in Korea, they have such an advanced infrastructure where if a kid shows promise in this game at an early age, they will take him out of school and put him into a gaming house where he will practice against the best players.
Wow.
Wow.
Wow, what a
It is-
dream if I would have been a
Yeah,
kid, right?
yeah.
Here, son, drop out of school and play Pac-Man.
Yeah, could you imagine? Could you imagine you could wake up in a perfect world that son, your third grade teacher comes, son. Steve wins here.
That's unbelievable. But really, Cody, like they will actually take a kid out of school and put him into like a esports playing farm or whatever.
Yeah, it's like a gaming house essentially. So they have coaches. They will get paid. Literally, people that are putting them on a regiment, a schedule, and they are practicing with the best players and starting at such a young age that they are able to just achieve this incredible level of skill and talent.
God, if you told me at 16 that I could not go to school, I could do nothing but play video games.
16, the way Cody sounds, they might be doing it at 10 or 11.
Now I have a 9-year-old, and I thank God that he's at a play date right now, and not hearing this. Because if he did, that'd be the end of it. Lock himself in his room.
He's gonna play to South
Gonna
Korea
wait
right
for the knock of the door, right, from some South Korean.
I've grown
his
up.
relative.
I've grown
My
up
mother's
in this
Korean.
town. Nick, could you just imagine if 40 years ago your dad said, "Okay, listen, I want you to drop out of school, play video games. We're going to legalize marijuana. We're going to do this," and you would have thought you were on Mars or something.
Oh, by the way, we're going to have a reality star as a president. Okay, sounds great.
Who would have guessed?
That's right. But one thing listen now, guys, about Donald Trump. Just think about this, okay? Here's a guy
Oh, no.
that is worth just real quick, worth billions of dollars.
Supposedly.
Goes out with a, has whatever, paid a porn star $150,000 something to sleep with her. He's got a wife 35 years younger than him. Built 20% of the high rises in New York, and now he's president of the United States. So if you ask a guy, what is that? I would say, that's like Batman. That's like a superhero to like a guy. I mean, just think like if they told you, hey, you're going to do all those things and then be president, you would think it was Spider-Man or something. That's superhero for a guy.
Well, we have another word for it, but I'm not going to use it on the air. All right, Cody, let me just, before we got rudely interrupted by that Trump supporter on the other side of this room, Cody, I'm real curious about something. I'm fascinated with your No, I really mean this. I'm fascinated with you kind of have a worldly view on not just the thing that you're passionate about, but a worldly view. And I am curious about your background and what drew you to this, and what made you into kind of a superstar of this area.
Yeah, absolutely. I studied communications, broadcasting. I got my master's of science in that, and I was studying theory as well. And I was just always super interested in video games and pro gaming. I used to watch the Halo broadcast when I was 15, 16 years old for until they ended Halo. MLG dropped them. But it's just such a fascinating thing, because you look at these players. Like, I used to compete locally, and I would get my butt kicked, like, no problem. But I would crush people online, and you start to think, what makes someone so much better than another in this? You know what I mean? And there's a lot of theory to it. It is certainly a sport, in my opinion, because it requires teamwork, patience, practice, energy, just like all the real core elements that you need in a sport to play. And I'm just super passionate about it.
And that's fascinating, Cody, and it brings up another great discussion. And Nolan, this is a discussion that I think you and I have had over numerous occasions. I know while I was heavily involved in the World Series of Poker, it was a discussion I had all the time. Is this a sport, or is this a pastime, or what is this? And I would always say, it's a sport. It's not an athletic endeavor, but it's certainly a sport. It's not a sport involving athletics or athleticism, but it is sporting in terms of the competition. It's a sporting competition is how I would put it. And I think, along those lines, you could say there are other things similar. Poker, bridge, which is a team game in many respects, right? Although there's a lot more element of randomness to it. But
race car driving. That's if you think about
race car driving, you have to be an athlete to drive a race car.
You think so?
Oh, yeah.
What about the G-forces that are put in your body as you go around
You
the
try
turns?
getting in that car for 3 hours.
What about hand-eye coordination, and isn't that kind of the same?
No, but but that's what I was going to ask Cody. Cody, is there a thing now when you're playing team against team? You know how, like, in the Olympics, there's the 800-meter relay team,
right.
Where they pass the baton to 4 different guys. Is there such a thing, like, when you're playing team sport, that a certain player is good in this stage and another player is good in that stage, and you line your teams up like that?
Yeah, sure. I can't speak for every game because I don't know. There's probably about 20 esports right now, and knowing the intricacies of all of them is almost impossible. But I can say in games like Call of Duty, you have people that are fraggers that will go into the rooms first, or people that are more objective players when you're playing game types like capture the flag or sabotage. Search and destroy, things with objectives. So you have different people that like to play different roles.
Right. So then a team could have, like, a guy that's great in these 2 departments and this stage and that stage. And then obviously there's a strategy to aligning your best players at their best part of the game, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I'll tell you firsthand, watching Halo professionally back in the day, and now with Halo 5, you have a certain player pick up a sniper rifle, and your heart sinks. You think, oh man, this is about to get really interesting, because the sniper's in his hands.
Okay, I got you.
Hey Cody, so I'm curious about when you're playing these games, and suppose you're off the clock. I mean, and you probably have buddies that are on other teams, right? In poker and even in football, the players, they hang out with each other and they're friends with players in other teams. I'm curious about trade secrets. Like, you have